Austin, Texas, December 1991. The holidays were just around the corner, and for most teens, that meant school break, hanging out with friends, and working part-time jobs. For Jennifer Harbison and Eliza Thomas, that night meant closing up the local frozen yogurt shop. Jennifer's younger sister Sarah and her best friend Amy came along too, just waiting on a ride home. But by morning, all 4 girls would be gone. The store was on fire, and when the flames were put out, what police found inside would haunt the city for decades. 4 girls, bound and murdered. No witnesses, no arrests that stuck. Over 30 years later, we still ask the same question: who killed the girls in the yogurt shop? Amy Ayres was just 13 years old, the youngest of the group. She wasn't supposed to be out late that night, but plans changed and she tagged along to get a ride home. Eliza Thomas, 17, was one of the employees closing up the yogurt shop. Friends say she was the kind of person who always looked out for others, especially her little sister. Jennifer Harbison, also 17, worked alongside Eliza. She had a big heart and a protective streak, especially when it came to her 15-year-old sister, Sarah. Sarah Harbison wasn't working that night. She and Amy were just waiting for Jennifer to finish her shift so they could all head home together. 4 girls, a quiet night. They laughed, worked and waited, completely unaware of what was coming. As the evening wore on, Jennifer and Eliza closed up the yogurt shop. Sarah and Amy were just hanging out, waiting for a ride home. Around 10:40, the final sale rang up, and the girls locked the front door, leaving the key in the lock as per shop policy. A few minutes later, a man in a military-style jacket joined the queue. He nudged other customers aside and asked to use the restroom. He took his time back there, and some believe he may have propped the rear door open to slip out later. Just before 11 p.m, a married couple, one of the last customers, watched 2 men acting nervously at a booth. They sat quietly, avoiding eye contact, looking uneasy. Then, silence. No more customers. The girls finished locking up, and soon after, the shop was on fire. When first responders arrived, they'd find all signs of something horrific. Minutes later, a patrol officer spotted smoke rising from the yogurt shop. Inside, firefighters made a horrifying discovery. 3 of the girls, Jennifer, Eliza, and Sarah, were found together, bound, gagged, and burned beyond recognition. Amy was found apart from the others. She'd been shot twice. The first bullet missed her brain, the second didn't. What happened in that shop wasn't random, it wasn't clumsy, it was planned, it was brutal, and whoever did it vanished. Austin police received over 50 confessions, some so bizarre that even Kenneth McDuff, a convicted serial killer, claimed responsibility just before his execution. Early on, investigators hunted countless leads, including a 15-year-old boy caught with a .22 handgun in a nearby mall just days after the murders. He confessed, then recanted, and was eventually ruled out. As the focus sharpened, 4 teenage boys became the main suspects: Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, Maurice Pierce, and Forrest Wellborn. Detectives interrogated them years later, culminating in confessions from Springsteen and Scott in 1999. But here's the catch: they were coerced. Neither confession was backed by physical evidence. No murder weapon, no DNA, no fingerprints tying them to the scene. And those confessions later unraveled. Their trials fell apart under the confrontation clause because prosecutors improperly used one man's statement in the other's trial. Both convictions were overturned and ultimately dismissed by 2009. Courts later confirmed no physical evidence ever connected them to the crime. So while the official case closed, the story and justice never did. In the early 2000s, Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott were convicted, not because of evidence, but because of what they said under pressure. Their taped confessions were the backbone of both trials. Years later, their words were picked apart. Investigators had used leading questions, long interrogations, and questionable tactics. Even worse, the prosecution broke courtroom rules by presenting one man's confession during the other's trial. Both verdicts collapsed. Then, DNA testing delivered the final blow. Whoever left genetic material at the scene wasn't either of them. The charges were dropped in 2009, and some of the same jurors who once found them guilty came forward, saying they never would have done so if they'd known the science. Springsteen and Scott were out, but the families still waiting for real answers. There are still many theories and loose ends surrounding this case, questions that have lingered for over 3 decades. The first theory: 2 men, 1 booth. A couple leaving the shop just before closing saw 2 men sitting quietly, acting nervous. They avoided eye contact, didn't touch their drinks, and seemed out of place. To this day, neither man has ever been identified. Theory 2: the man in the military jacket. Earlier that night, a different man had pushed his way to the front of the line, asking to use the restroom. He was back there a long time. Some believe he may have quietly unlatched the rear exit, the same door found unlocked after the fire. We wonder, was it a robbery or something else? Around $550 was missing, but that's all. The violence, the fire, the way the girls were restrained, it didn't feel random, it felt calculated. Some believe this wasn't about money at all. And lastly, there's the DNA. Male DNA was recovered from the crime scene. It didn't match any of the original suspects. Years later, investigators got a partial YSTR match through a public genealogy database, but the sample came from a protected FBI research donor, and under current privacy laws, they can't release the name. With no way to identify that individual, the lead went cold. And just like that, one of the most promising breakthroughs in the case slipped out of reach. More than 30 years have passed, and the families still haven't stopped fighting. In 2022, a new federal law was signed in response to this very case. It's called the Homicide Victims Families' Rights Act, and it gives families of cold case victims the legal right to request a full federal review if the case has gone unsolved for over 3 years. The hope is simple: to make sure no lead is left untouched and no mistake is buried. The yogurt shop murders remain one of the most infamous unsolved crimes in Texas history. And for 4 families and an entire city, the search for justice isn't over. Not yet. 4 girls walked into that shop expecting nothing more than a normal night. They laughed, they worked, they waited for a ride home, and they never left. Decades have passed, trials have come and gone, evidence has surfaced, then vanished. But one thing hasn't changed: there's still no justice. 4 lives were taken, and whoever did it is still out there. Over 30 years later, the question still lingers: who killed the girls in the yogurt shop? In memory of Amy Ayers, Eliza Thomas, Jennifer Harbison, and Sarah Harbison. 4 daughters, 4 friends, 4 lives taken too soon. This episode is dedicated to them and to the families who continue to seek the truth. Thank you for watching today's episode of Midnight Crimes. This case was new to me and it was brutally tough to get through. The cold ones always hit harder. No answers, just pain, silence, and a story that never really ends. If you made it this far, thank you. Sharing these cases helps keep the victims remembered, and sometimes it brings new eyes to the truth. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, stay safe and stay sharp.